what do you want? What do you want from your career? Where are you going? And it's such a simple question, but I've asked it a number of times
I don't particularly believe that people are born leaders or they're not. I don't think it's a binary thing at birth.
Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of The Legal Loop. I'm very excited to announce we'll be joined by two special guests, James Markham and Darren Mee, the authors of The Legal MBA. James Markham is a recognised leader in business improvement and consultancy with over a decade in experience in the legal and professional services sectors. James has had a range of roles at prestigious firms like Dentons, Hogan Lovells and DLA Piper, focusing on business transformation and operational efficiency. He is the founder of Red Robin Associates, a boutique consultancy dedicated to solving complex business challenges. Darren Mee is a highly accomplished business consultant and founder of the New Way Consulting, where he helps law firms improve their performance, profitability, and strategic direction. He has an equally impressive career that includes senior roles at RSM UK and Baker Tilly. Darren has dedicated himself to driving transformation and operational excellence in professional services, making both of them amazing guests for our episode today. Without further ado, James, how are you?
Good. I'm kind of thinking if this whole legal career thing doesn't work out for you, kind of just going for marketing and hype. I think that was best for anyone. So I don't know, that's probably the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me.
I think it's your credentials to speak for themselves. I'm sure anyone would do the same. And Darren, how about yourself?
Yeah, echo what James has said. That was quite a rant. So thank you for that. Really delighted to be here, and hopefully your listeners and audience will get some value out of the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I think they definitely will, and myself too. I've got a lot of questions for you guys lined up. Before we delve into the main topics, just starting off with a bit about this brilliant book of yours, The Legal MBA. Sorry, this way. It's a valuable resource, and I've been reading it myself. For those that may not have come across it, could you just summarize a bit about what the book's about and some key takeaways on who it's targeted for? James, if you can start off with yourself, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think the Legal MBA Essentials is really a brief textbook on the business of law, in contrast to the practice of law. So probably not the stuff that you're learning at law school and in your training contracts, but more how the law firm makes money, how it works, how does marketing hang together with operations, with IT. And I think one of the key things for us in writing it was really like showing the links between those different areas, those different topics. There's a tendency that law firms can get a bit siloed, a little bit specialised. We wanted to just highlight how all of these hang together and how you need consistency in your approach across all of these areas.
Yeah, definitely. And Darren, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, probably. It's probably worth mentioning why we did it and what was the spark. So James and I were fortunate enough to start our careers in big accountancy firms, and I think we're introduced as accountants to a broader business education at an earlier stage in our careers. However, we're not introduced to the finer points of law. And as we I was a partner in one of the big accountancy firms, and as it got to the point that I was having to draft contracts of engagement or review software contracts with suppliers, I was massively out of my depth. And having worked with law firms for so long, we realised that there are a number of people that get promoted to a senior level and then figure out, oh gosh, no one ever really taught me about the business of law. It was just something I had to pick up, particularly the financial side. And some of your listeners and audience will probably start to be exposed to this if they haven't already. Things around matter and client budgeting and billing and making sure their time's on the clock and lock up and getting cash in at a reasonable basis, realization rates, utilization rates. There's a lot of terms that people pick up, but they don't necessarily understand the fundamentals. And rather than be one of those individuals that just sort of throws and hurls insults from the sidelines, we wanted to actually help people, because we are on the lawyers and solicitors side here. We want to plug that gap that isn't covered at law school, that isn't covered in the early stages of a training contract, and in some cases isn't picked up on the job as people get promoted and get more senior.
Yeah, definitely. I found that it did boost my commercial awareness and practical understanding of how a law firm actually works, because at the end of the day, it still is a business, and it's really important that I feel like as junior lawyers, we learned that early on. Yeah, so that was a great summary, guys. And for our listeners, we've broken this podcast into 3 segments. The first segment, we're going to cover leadership and strategy in law. Then we're going to talk about modern skills for the future lawyer. And in the final segment, we're going to talk about innovation and future of the legal industry. So let's jump into our first segment, leadership and strategy in the law. It's a massive topic, as you guys are aware. Before we get into any of the nitty and gritty questions, could you guys just tell us how you define leadership, some qualities, attributes, skills you'd assign to leadership? Darren, if we can start off with yourself this time.
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's one of those things that you pick up as you do an MBA. There's often a distinction made between leadership and management. And if management is kind of doing things right, leadership is more about doing the right things. So there's a sort of famous analogy of people. I think it's an army setting, but people hacking their way through a jungle, and the managers are there sharpening the tools, sharpening the machetes, coming up with rehabilitation programs for the employees. The leader in that analogy is up a tree looking for where we really should be going, or in some cases just screaming out, "We're in the wrong jungle, guys." So I like that as an analogy because it also touches on strategy as well. So often we can be so focused on head down, just trying to optimize and do the thing that we're doing more efficiently or better, when we might be doing the wrong things. And for me, a leader's role and a leader within a firm is there to sort of be looking out into the external environment, the jungle that's out there, and figuring out where should we be going.
Yeah, definitely. And I like the analogy. It just allows you to better grasp and understanding of how you exactly define leadership. James, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I've got a better metaphor. No, I mean, I think to maybe relate back, I think I completely agree with that. It's to doing the right things rather than doing the things right. And I think that lends itself to a leader needing to have breadth, perhaps, rather than depth, in terms of needing to understand, so the jungle thing. Well, I don't know, which trees are easy to cut through, which ones aren't. Let's go that way. Let's get out of the jungle. I don't know how far we can stretch. To be honest, I've never cut myself out of the jungle. I think I'm not the right leader or manager for this scenario. But I think there are then parallels back into some of the chapters Darren, you mentioned the strategy. But then I think being able to say, well, what are we trying to do? Where are we trying to get to? The strategy around, well, how are we going to get there? Well, what does that mean then for our marketing? What does that mean for our operations, our commercial model, our, HR people, and this business? I think having that breadth and being able to see those touch points, and then being able to delegate that through to say, okay, now here, management team, off you go. I've set the direction. We've set all of those bits are lined up. Off you go. You're all pulling in the same direction. You haven't got half your team hacking left out the jungle and half the team hacking out right, and everyone else sitting there going, what are we doing? There you go. I'm going to torch the metaphor a bit more for you.
And James, if I can, I'll kill that metaphor and bring it back to a law firm set.
I think we can get 45 minutes out, to be honest.
I guess we've touched on leadership there as, a senior role within a firm, but leadership and management is equally applicable to each individual within the firm as well. And particularly for your audience, as they're thinking about their career, we can often be so focused on the management side of it, doing things right, that we don't necessarily do the right things. And I often find one of the most impactful questions, what do you want? What do you want from your career? Where are you going? And it's such a simple question, but I've asked it a number of times to friends, colleagues, people that I work with, and they're often stumped. So I think it's really important that individuals also take the leadership role within their own career as well, and figure out what path are they going down. Are they going to stay in practice? If they're going to stay in practice, are they going down a technical specialism? Do they have more of an interest in the client relationship stuff? Do they want to be one of those rainmakers that's out there bringing in the big deals? If they don't want to stay in practice, are they going to go in-house? Are they going to move out of the law entirely? But I think starting with the end in mind and thinking of what is the goal, and then crafting that path through the jungle to that goal, I think is each of our own personal responsibilities. See, I managed to shoot on the jungle back in eventually.
Yeah, well, we'll keep on returning to it.
Yeah, I think you guys are experts at keeping the metaphors going. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think our listeners would take some value from that. And it ties into sort of smart targets and defining what is it you want and allowing that to guide the path. So for someone who's just starting out, for example, a really junior lawyer, whether they're paralegal, trainee, apprentice like myself, what's one small thing they can do today to start building those skills and carving out that path for themselves?
Yeah, do you want me to have a stab at that?
Yeah, sorry, Darren, go for it.
Again, if I think back to my personal experience being a relatively junior person with an accountancy firm, albeit probably 20 years ago now, if my memory stretches that far, we're in a profession that is essentially an apprenticeship. You've done the by the book learning by now. Really, your career is going to come on in leaps and bounds by really with the people that you associate with. So I think having a can-do attitude and having a proactive attitude to taking on work, taking responsibility and taking ownership for whatever it is, whatever the tasks or activities are that get delegated to you, I think you'll get into a virtuous cycle of you'll be taken under the wing of someone more senior, and you can learn from those individuals. So I think the more and more you can be exposed to people that are 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead of you, if not 10 years ahead, 15 years ahead, will pay dividends.
Yep, definitely. James, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely, I echo that kind of just taking stock of not just what you're doing, but just what are others doing. Can you learn and can you see, can you observe, can you sort of that learning by osmosis thing? I think that is really powerful early in your career. I think from a skill set perspective in that kind of management leadership space, I think probably the first thing you'll be expected to do is to be able to delegate. Yeah, you'll go from you being the one, whatever it is, stood by the photocopier making the tea. The rubbish jobs are, I don't know, they're the ones I got. Maybe you've got slightly better ones down when you were at training. But yeah, you're going to move from that to having to delegate and coordinate, have a number of tasks come together for a deadline. And so I think you can have that with one eye in mind, so when you're working with your supervisors, there will be supervisors that you get on with that, think, they manage me really well. They, whatever it is, they give me plenty of notice, they're clear on deadlines, they tell me what the task is, whatever the specific things are. And I pay particular attention to that because that's going to be the first thing you're asked to do. And so just being able to reflect on and say, well, I really like working with Darren because he's really good at delegating and he explains things clearly. And I really hate working with James because he's really vague and he throws things up in the air or whatever it is, or there's a big panic at the last minute. So I'm going to be more like Darren and less like James. I mean, Darren loves this mess.
Heaven forbid.
I already hate this mess, I prefer the jungle. I think that's really powerful. I think that gives you a real step up because that is going to be kind of the first, I think, step for most people stepping out of that purely technical delivery role into that broader business impact. I think just by having spent, that couple of years just paying attention exactly to Darren's points, it's just a couple of steps ahead of you, those that are delegating to you. I think that will put you in really good stead to kind of be able to grab that and just, I guess, be a bit more conscientious, a bit more mindful about how you're then going about delegating. That would be the leg up I'd suggest.
Yeah, definitely. I think you guys summed up really well the fact that the industry we're in, people are very supportive, and the culture within the firm itself, we have that opportunity where, because the demands of the job can be technical, and even if you are junior within the firm, there's always something for you to do, and there's always that opportunity for you to bounce off more senior members, see how they deal with stuff, see what skills they have, and it's a really good position to be in. So I think you guys summed that part really well and hit the nail on the head when you talk about leadership and how we can start picking that up from such an early age. But yeah, delegation is definitely a daunting one. It's not something you get exposed to. It's not something you're taught at uni, or it's not something you can read in a text. But it does come down to those soft skills and being able to communicate with people effectively. And the best way to go about it. One thing I wanted to ask you guys is, junior leaders often hear that experience is closely synced with leadership. What are your views on that? Do you think leadership comes with experience, or is it something that can be taught in a matter of a few months? Or how do you think leadership happens, or leadership is developed? Sorry, James, can we start off with you?
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the obvious answer, given that we've just written a book, is we reckon you can read a book and you'll get better. But if we're going to be less flippant or just nakedly self-interested, I think you touched on it. I think it is a bit of both. I don't particularly believe that people are born leaders or they're not. I don't think it's a binary thing at birth. I think you can read, James like our book, other books. You can go on courses and they will help. I think they particularly help you become aware of what you don't know. They give you access to frameworks or models or other people's experiences, through case studies or direct learning that you wouldn't have at that point in your career, or that you might not realistically get in your career at all. But to the point you made, you've also got to have the experience of putting it into practice, of trying things, frankly, making mistakes and learning from them and trying again a bit better and sort of iteratively getting better. I think the combination of you being able to step out of the churn. I'm resisting going back into the jungle so hard right now. But you're coming out of that.
Do it, James.
I can't. I'm back in the jungle. Like you've got to, to be able to take the time to go and spend that time and read a book, to go on a course, to, go for a coffee with your supervisor or with a partner or a manager in your practice area or department and just kind of, what advice would you give me? They're such powerful learning experiences, but you do have to make the time to do that. And, it is a time-pressured profession, and they've got to recognize that. But then I think you've got to say, right, okay, well, what did I learn from this book, from this course, from these people, and what am I going to try? What am I going to do tomorrow that's a little bit different? I'm a sucker for it. I've got a bookcase behind me. I've got a bookcase in front of me. I just pretend that I'm just going to absorb all of this learning through osmosis. I've probably read half of it, and the rest of them are just books that are sat there for years at a time, and I'll get round to them one day. That's not learning. That's not leadership, ultimately. That's just as collection of books, right? The combination of taking that and applying it, I think that's the sweet spot that'll get you the benefits of both, that best of both worlds kind of idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's for our listeners and viewers, we're really good at that theory side of things, like studying things, picking things up from having read so many textbooks and all that stuff. And it comes down to just experimenting and not being afraid to make those mistakes. Darren, is there anything you'd like to add to what James has said?
Yeah, I suppose just to make the distinction between sort of appointed leadership roles and then emergent leaders. So those individuals that emerge out of an organisation. I think the appointed leadership roles almost always come with some experience. I think it would be a tricky sell to say, right, our next managing partner is going to be an apprentice trainee. I think that would take quite a lot of convincing. But that's not to say that each of us at any stage in our career can start to emerge as leaders, either within our team, within our department, within a particular specialism, whether that's being the social media expert within your team or being the AI expert within your team. I think you can carve out little niches and be the leader in there. But this is potentially going a little bit too woolly and esoteric, but two of the major characteristics of a leader are courage and compassion. And I think if we can all get that right balance between being courageous and compassionate and empathetic, then you'll be a pretty unstoppable leader in no time.
That's great. And I think those characteristics, I can see how they're really important, and I've never kind of thought of it like that. And it takes me quite nicely onto my next question, which I'll start off with you, James, please. If imagine you were in a legal practice right now, so you're not consulting, and you're, let's say, at a senior role, and you're managing junior lawyers. How would you spot someone that's getting to that path of becoming a leader? Is there any distinctions? Is there anything that will set that a junior apart from everyone else? How would you identify a leader? And I think Darren touched upon that. Sorry, James. I think Darren touched upon that towards the end of his answer. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a great question. And you're right. I think Darren did touch on it. I think, and there's probably a risk of sounding like a lawyer now. Like, it depends, right? I think there's a bit of it depends at what stage of what seniority, what stage of career of the individuals we're talking about. I think ultimately you're looking for behaviours, or you're looking for a demonstration of values that are aligned to your team or to practically, whether that speaks to your courage and compassion point, Darren. Yeah, and I think you can demonstrate that in your first week. If there's a big deal on and it's all hands to deck, everyone's working till the 11th hour at night, and you're the one that stays behind and makes sure that someone's okay, or says, do you know what, this person's really struggling, let me help you with that piece of work. Like, there's your compassion, right? And if you're in a meeting and someone says, what does everyone think about this? And everyone's silent, and you're the one that puts your hand up and you say something. There's courage, right? I think that just those little behaviors. And so kind of, if you're like looking from the outside in and looking for that, you're looking for those people that are, thoughtfully trying to contribute, I guess, to something greater than themselves. They're trying to contribute to the team. They're trying to contribute to that team meeting. They're trying to make that team member's life a little bit easier by just picking up some slack. I think as you get a little bit more senior, I think you can then look for people that are maybe volunteering to take on, not formal responsibilities in like here's a job description and a nice fancy job title. But, again, a couple of the examples Darren touched on, is this person kind of running point on, what are we doing with legal tech or AI? Yeah. And you're the only one that knows how the photocopy works because it's like a dark art in the corner and everyone's struggling with it. Whatever it is, I think you can kind of take ownership of particular areas. And from that, you're kind of spotting the people that are kind of, I suppose, signaling that they both want and are both able to take on those broader responsibilities from, that pure technical delivering the work kind of perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the point you made at the start about I think the point you made at the start where you mentioned about speaking up in meetings and the little things that are often overlooked, and I'm sure they resonate with a lot of our listeners because they're things they just naturally do, or they're things that they might do, but they don't see the longer term consequences of putting your hand up, or when it's certain times of the year and some people have extra holidays, whether they're religious reasons or it's a busier period, and taking that initiative and saying, I've got some capacity or I'm not on annual leave. And sometimes people just do it from the good of their heart or for whatever their reasons might be. But it's good to hear from experienced individuals like yourself that things like that do make a difference and there are longer term consequences on a junior lawyer's career. Darren, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Just one topic of modelling, which unfortunately, looking at James and my face, not the sort of modelling that's really attractive, but modeling behaviors of people that you respect and admire. You can see other partners or other associates and see what are the things they're doing that you aspire to, and then quite frankly just copy them. Again, when I was a junior, I had this sort of informal practice of trying to model a Frankenstein's monster of all the best parts of the partners that I respected. So I'm going to try and model the sort of business development skills of this guy and the people management skills of this lady and the financial acumen of this person, and just try and get all the strengths from each of them. Obviously fell well short of all of those, but I think just aspiring to something and knowing how they've gone down that path is a massive, massive cheat code in any career. Just asking people, it doesn't have to be formal mentorship, but people love to hear nice things about themselves, to approach someone and say, I really like how you do this. I'd love to take you for a coffee and just understand how you do that. Or I saw you operating like this in a meeting. I'd love to learn a bit more about it. People are very generous with their time, particularly if their ego has had a little bit of a tickle along the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just the part you say at the end, it's one of those ways of the world, isn't it? That you often hear people love talking about themselves. And I guess when you do ask them those questions and where they are talking about themselves and you have those admirations about skills they have or whatever it is, behaviors, it can also really benefit you as a junior. I think you guys summed up leadership and gave some really, really valuable advice and tips, and I'm sure our listeners are making some notes.